listening to the Questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the Questionnaire.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The Questionnaire.
Get your comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.
What the heck? Man, like, I don't know what possessed me to run on this quest, but I can tell you, I love that I have. I truly, truly, truly do. This is the Questionnaire for all y'all questers out there, right? I am the Unknown Factor, aka that Wade Wilson of hip hop, right? And man, we got a couple people returning today, right? Like, honestly, I don't, like, I'd have to think how long it's been. And they both got a lot in the works, man. But first, yeah, we got our co-hosts for tonight. Yeah, for the first time co-hosting, Erica Schultz. How you doing?
I am back.
That was the greatest bit of pre-banter that I think I've... Look, if there's ever a reason to go join the Patreon for the Questionnaire, right? it's $1 a month. It's cheap. Look, you can give it a 7-day free trial if you really want to go look at it. But if there's any pre-banter y'all really, really, really want to watch, it is when Erica is sitting talking to the man who right now is writing that. He's one of the co-creators of that. He's done a number of other things. He wrote this right here. You know, I'm hoping y'all should be able to read that after I get done doing what I'm doing. Fabian Nicieza.
Wow, you screwed it up completely.
Isn't it
It's just
Nicieza?
amazing.
Nicieza.
After all the conversation we
Did
had,
I really?
You even pronounced it differently than you did earlier when you were pronouncing it closer to being right.
Well, let me ask you, how do you pronounce it in Spanish?
Fabian Nicieza.
Nicieza.
In español es Fabian Nicieza.
What?
In English, it's Fabian Nicieza. And in American, it's Fabian.
See, because I pronounce the Z like Italian, Nicieza.
But it's not Italian, it's Spanish.
I know,
so it's
I know, but I'm Italian and I pronounce everything.
I hear
I'm
you.
good. Look,
Do you pronounce the Z in Schultz as an Italian?
Well, it's not an Italian last name.
Okay, there you go. Neither's Nicieza. But
Listen.
okay, well, look. I'm Gord.
I walked my co-host right into that trap.
It's fine. It's Fabian. It's fine. I mean, I've got a comic on my wall upstairs that says, "To Erica, we don't want her to join the team." And you like wrote like Sunspot sulking.
That was an X-Force comic? Or
Yeah.
New Mutants comic?
Wait. It's New Mutants when Sunspot's got his and he's like, I'm leaving.
Oh, yeah.
And it's we don't want Erica on this team anyway. Yeah, get her out of here.
That was funny. That was good.
And you wonder why she's mean to you, Fabian?
I'm not mean. When am I ever mean to you?
Hey, he's the one that said it, not me.
I didn't say it.
Fabian and I go way back.
Way back.
We do.
Look, I'm telling you. At first, I gotta say, if there is ever a reason to go over to the Patreon for the Questionnaire to check some before, because I swear I'm gonna get that up before I get the episode up, just so it's there, because that was freaking hilarious. Like, y'all are trying to convince me to make one of the upcoming guests cry when he shows up. Like,
well, you don't have to make him cry, but if you were to make him cry, Fabian has a
surefire way to do it. A surefire way to stab him at the heart of his inner boy.
Yep. I have a question for Fabian though. So you've written a bajillion characters. Is there a character that you haven't written that you've always really wanted to?
In comic books, like superhero comics, like standard Marvel.
No,
DC
just
stuff?
in general.
Ooh.
I mean, it could be a Valiant character. It could be a character from Dark Horse. It could be, you could say Hellboy, or, it could be somebody from IDW, something like that. But just an IP that you haven't, because you've been in the business for a long time. And because you've been in the business for a long time, you've had the opportunity to work with a bunch of different companies. And on a bunch of different characters. So is there a character that just you just happen to have not worked on for whatever reason?
I think that the only property I could think of offhand, I'm sure I can come up with more if I really thought about it, but the only one I could really think of offhand that I would probably still really like a chance to write is Star Trek, of some variation, some form of Star Trek, the Star Trek universe. I was supposed to write one of the Marvel books when they got the license back in the early '90s, but I left Marvel and went full time at Acclaim, so they assigned the book to somebody else. But which book was that? I was going to write the Deep Space Nine book. That's the one I wanted.
That's my favorite Star Trek
and,
series of all time.
And I never got the chance to do it. I would like to have. I still would like to. So yeah, Star Trek is probably the one.
Reach out to Heather Antos. She's
That's
the
what-
editor up on Star Trek. So
I
Yeah,
was
she knows, but I
actually-
don't know that I want to do it in comics. I may prefer to do it in
novelization.
in books. Yeah.
Well,
But
now that
I
you're
don't-
some like big time novelist now.
Yeah, I wish I was a big time novelist. Not quite. I'm a typing novelist looking to sell his third book pretty soon now.
Oh, so you've got, how far are you in that third book?
The agent has. I'm not a big time novelist, but because I had the first two books, for the most part, we can submit to purchasing editors at publishing houses without a full manuscript. So I wrote a half manuscript. I wrote the first half of a book, which was more than I even needed to. I could have gone out with like 3-4 chapters and an outline, but I wanted to write the first half just because of the structure of the book. Made me feel more comfortable doing that. So I wrote the first half with an outline. We're just tweaking and making corrections now, and it's probably going to go out to editors in May, I guess. We're toward the end of April now. So yeah, it'll go out in May, and then the process starts. It takes them months to read it. It takes them months to decide if they want to get it. Try to get more than one person interested in it if you can, and so on and so forth. So for that
Congrats,
process
though.
is still a ways off. Well,
Yeah.
the last few years have been very sobering and very enlightening as to the realities.
Oh, in terms of novelizations, novels.
Yeah, just in
versus
terms of
comics?
some of the nuances of prose writing and some of the challenges of prose writing. And it's my preference to do more of that, and if possible, I could probably be pretty comfortable just not writing any more comics anymore and just doing that. Although I still like writing comics, I just feel like no matter what, and I've written a bunch of comics lately that I've really enjoyed, but no matter what, it's still doing something I've done a gajillion times before. So it feels sort of like, like been there, done that, no matter what. And like I said, I've been pretty lucky lately because I've gotten to work with really good artists on characters I really like. I've had the luxury where I'm at a point in my life and my age where they ask me, and if I'm not interested, I just say no. And if it's a character or an editor or an artist, any combo of that I like, then I'll say yes. So that's kind of where I've been at comics wise.
How does it feel to go back to cable?
Oh, it was great. It was fun. He's one of my favorite characters to write and always has been. I feel I see him in a way that almost no other writer seems to, and I don't understand why. And they don't. And I don't really care why they don't. It doesn't matter to me. I just write him the way he is. I write him to who I think he is. I've written him more than anybody else on the planet has written him. So I'm at a point right now where I really don't care what anyone else does or says or thinks about him. I know who he is as a character because on and off I've lived with him for 30 years now.
And I love
and getting to work with Lauren was the editor, and she's great. Lauren Amaro. She was great to work with on the miniseries. Working with Scott Eaton was great because he's kind of exactly what I want out of an artist. He's just like a regular old style, strong storytelling, strong, powerful images, and that's perfect for a character like Cable.
Cool.
And I love what you've done with the with this Cable run, man, because I feel like with the X-Men universe here recently, it's kind of it's in my opinion, as someone that has been a longtime X-Men fan, but I didn't keep up with the whole Krakoa era and all that. Like, it got really hard to jump into. But as someone that was aware of the Cable, I feel like this is something that you've made that, if someone was like hadn't read an X-Men book in a while, but like was a fan of it, like say pre-Krakoa, right? They could jump in and read this, and it's so effortless. And like you said, you've written so much of Cable, man. The way you have the young Cable or the young and old Nate interacting, it's got me rolling, to be frank. right? I
I
mean, it's
appreciate it.
yeah,
I read all of Jerry's Young Cable run, and I hate the concept, but I liked the execution. I liked the character. So getting to do the two of them together to me is just it's no all it was really was replacing the dynamic of Cable and Deadpool together. The character works better when he has someone to play off of. And I think the two of them play off of each other really well. The irony is that originally it was expected that I would really closely tie into whatever's going on in the Fall of X, and I wasn't all that excited about they sneeze in one book and they say Gesundheit in your book kind of crossover scenario, which happens sometimes when you're working on these crossovers to the detriment of everything involved.
I'm glad that you said that.
I can say all of that stuff.
No, but this idea of there being such an interconnectivity that each story is so dependent on every other story. It as a writer and a creator, it I think it hamstrings you.
Yeah, well, it does. But the truth of the matter is that that's really not the fault of the concept of the crossover. It's the fault of the execution of the people running the crossover. Because the truth of the matter is if you do it right, you organize your story and outline it in such a way that you have multiple carve-outs that other story threads and avenues that can be explored. And that's how you divide it up. Not so that they jump off panel on one page in one book and jump into panel on another book. Everybody has their own kind of side mission storyline, and this crossover wasn't quite being organized that way. So it literally became, well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about tying into the crossover too much because I'd been waiting for quite a while to write the first script and I couldn't because we kept waiting for the crossover outlines and all this stuff. So I ended up just writing it. And I said in script, I'll throw in stuff that ties us into the world of what's going on. And that's
even
it.
if it's just dialogue. Yeah.
Even if it's just dialogue, which is all it is really in this case. And that's all it is. And I asked them to just give me where you want them to go, they're going to return back to your crossover together. So just tell me. And, I barely got that. So I just end issue 4 in a fun sort of literally we're leaping out of the panel and we're going to end up leaping into something. We just don't know what yet.
Oh, well, I want to ask both of you this. When do you think that shifted drastically? Because I remember back.
What do you mean? The crossover dynamics?
Yeah, the crossover dynamic. Like, look, because one of my favorite big events of all time will always probably be the Age of Apocalypse. There's something about that entire story that I really love, except they did Deadpool dirty, and that really always irked me a little bit, But besides that, I love that whole story arc, and it's very much one that you didn't have to read it. Like there were 4 or 5, like the whole 4 issues where it's leading up to he kills Xavier accidentally, the Alpha, the Omega, and then you could pretty much have picked and choose almost anything, and I don't feel like you would have had to have read every single book. There were totally ones that stood out on their own. Or am I remembering that book wrong now that I think more?
No,
Blink had a miniseries.
Relatively right. No, that was afterwards.
Oh, okay.
The Age of Apocalypse storyline was designed the way it was badly designed, by the way, but it was designed the way that I mentioned earlier, where there was an overarching larger storyline, but because of the scope and breadth of that storyline, you can carve out individual tracks for each book to take. So each book had its own kind of mission and its own goal, and you could conclude that goal, which concluded your miniseries, and that thread would take you back to the main storyline. Now, I will, without going into detail, because I forget 90% of the detail, it's been so long that whole structure suffered greatly because it did not have an ending well into the process of us all having started. So it made the back halves of those miniseries incredibly difficult to write and incredibly challenging and sloppy in my mind, because the ending hadn't been determined. And I was not a part of any of that at that point. I was really on the outs, and I wanted to be on the outs. So that was really more of a Bob Harris, Scott Lobdell sort of a process, the two of them. And ultimately, you like it and you remember it fondly because it was so huge. And it did do its job right in giving every book its own reason for being and its own storyline. But ultimately it wasn't too well organized, you know. It was far less organized on the behind the scenes than you thought reading it.
As a writer, are you the type of person where before you start scripting, you have to know the end?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, I have to know the end, but no, I don't have to have every single detail figured out and every I dotted and every T crossed. I don't have to do that. But I don't know that I've ever really started a story, especially for comic books, because they're only 22 pages and now 20 pages long. I don't think I've ever started a story in a comic book where I didn't know what the ending had to be. That doesn't mean I knew exactly what the ending would be, but I knew what the ending had to be, you know?
What I find sometimes, especially when I was teaching, is when I was teaching writing, there were students that didn't know where they wanted the story to go, and they didn't know what the ending was. And for somebody like me, who I do outlines and everything, and I try and work everything through before laying out the script, or work as much through as I can, I found that completely mind-boggling to me, that you can start on this huge project and just do it as you go along without really having a plan for it.
Well, the interesting aspect of that, Eric, is 5 years from now, find out from any of those students who work that way, which one of them have finished anything. You know?
Yeah, well, that's
which ones of those students have completed any of those stories, you know?
That was one of the points that I was trying to give them. You have to have an ending, but
the reason professional writers get paid is to tell a story. By its very nature, that means that the story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even in sequential publishing, it still has to have a beginning, middle, and end. That's what you're getting paid to do. So there's not the luxury of kind of following your muse in that regard. Not the least of which is, you know, it's established corporate characters with established personalities and histories. So in many ways, people find that more difficult to write. I've always found that far easier to write because
the guardrails are already there for you.
The guardrails are already there. It's like complaining about having lanes on your highway when you're driving. I mean, you have to drive in the lanes. That's all, you know. Yeah. So you're complaining as a writer because you can't take your car all over the flat desert landscape and drive anywhere you want. I mean, you know, you know where you got to go. That's all. You know what you got to do. So you just do it. You get paid, and you go on to the next one. It's not for me. Writing for mainstream superhero publishers stopped being a thrill for having accomplished it a long time ago, because I was pretty lucky and I got to accomplish it pretty young overall. You know, by the time I was 30, I was already writing multiple books for Marvel Comics, and that's what I wanted to do since I was 10 years old. You know, so it lost that allure, and other kinds of writing started to engage me and interest me more. And ultimately, you know, 7-8 years ago, prose writing really started for me to be that allure, you know.
Now, I'm curious, with you starting the prose novels, are there any characters that you've worked on in comics that you would be interested in doing a prose novel on?
There was on an old 3M hard plastic disc that we used to slide into the side of our laptops. There's about 275 manuscript pages of a Gambit novel that I was hired to write by Byron Price Publishing, and Marvel killed the licensing deal when I was about almost halfway through the novel, and not just my book. A bunch of books got killed, and that was one of them. But I was writing a Gambit novel 25 years ago, and that, but no, not to tell you the truth, not. I would. I just haven't given it much thought. But sure, I'd be interested in writing novels of Marvel characters, depending on the characters. But superhero characters don't work that great in regular prose because our minds are so conditioned to them being visual medium, more so now than ever with film and television. So the characters that would work best in prose are less the spandex one to me and more the street characters or the magical / horror characters. Those would work far better in prose for me than, say, Spider-Man or Captain America or something like that,
I can totally see where you're coming from, and I only say this because of the insane amount of the popularity that the character has right now, and God knows it's about to go up with the Deadpool and Wolverine film. I feel like a Deadpool one would just sell. Not necessarily that people would even really read it, but it would just be so prolific and out there.
But what would be the
that
point of
people would
writing
buy
something
it.
if somebody's not going to read it?
There's that. But beyond that, I think the character, if you're going to do the character right in a prose novel, I think that it's going to exhaust the readers really quickly. And I actually about 15 years ago, maybe, I started to work on a Deadpool prose novel, tinkering with it, and I think I got to page 30 or so, and I go, "This is giving me a headache." It's just, if I'm going to do this right, it's too exhausting for the narrative structure of prose. Lacking in the visuals, it causes if he's the main character and the main focus, it's just going off the rails too often, too quickly, and it throws off the kind of the narrative through line that prose needs, So I don't know that it would work that well. Can you imagine Deadpool first person narrating a book?
Oh my God.
You could do it like Bram Stoker's Dracula, where every chapter is a letter to somebody.
Oh, that would be interesting. And a Deadpool writing a letter to somebody. No, I did. Erica, like the first 35 pages I had, I interrupted one chapter because Deadpool had a page of Gil Kane nose up shots, and you would actually have them in the book. And I interrupted another chapter because he had his recipe for like jambalaya or something that he wanted to put on. So it's just, and I'm doing all this, and it sounds like it's fun when I'm describing it, but it really wasn't from a writing standpoint,
Yeah.
It's like, so no, I said no, thank you.
I can I just see the first 35 pages of that by possibility?
I don't even know what laptop it's in.
I want to see that Gambit novel because AJ just finished reading all of your Gambit stuff. He just did a full reread of that.
Eric, I have not looked at that in 20 years, and I don't think I want to look at that. Not the least of which is that I have to find some place that can do the conversion of the old 3M disc. Because that's literally the only place that it exists is on the disc.
Is it on a 3.5 inch?
Yeah, disc? I think it's a 3.5 inch plastic 3M disc that had the little metal kind of clip on the top. But the laptops don't have side ports anymore. You have to take it to a place that'll transfer it into Word.
I'm trying to think that
and I don't even know if back then, I don't think I had a MacBook back then. I think it might not have even been a MacBook, so I don't even know if it's in Word. I don't even remember at this point. It was a long time.
If it's an RTF file, then no,
it was not an RTF file. Okay. It might have been Word. I might have been using Word back then too. I think I was. It doesn't matter. It's never going to see the light of day, Eric. I'm after having written the novels I've written, I'm never going to allow that to see the light of day. I don't think it was good in hindsight. I have no idea, but I don't think it was good. It was great in terms of its thought, in terms of its scope, in terms of what I was going to be delving into with the character, fleshing out ridiculous amounts of his childhood and blah blah blah. But I don't think it was actually well written, so I'll pass.
Okay.
One of the reasons it took me so long to write prose is because every time I tried it, I hated what I did. I just kept chucking everything I did. I'd get to a 30, 40 page mark and I'd go, this sucks, and I'd stop. And I tried prose quite often in the past, over 20 something, since the 90s. I was trying prose, but never for publication, except for that Gambit novel. Never for publication, just for me to try to get my way through it. So it wasn't until I started writing Suburban Dicks, I did it more out of like just anger and self-frustration than anything else. I just said, I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna write one. I'm gonna finish it, period. This is the one I wanted to do the most over the course of time, so I'm gonna do it. And it turned out well for me in that time, at that time period. For that amount of time, it turned out really well for me. So I'm glad it went that way. But ultimately, my original thinking was never, I'm going to sell this thing, it's going to be blah blah blah. I didn't think it would be picked up by a hardcover book house, and I didn't think I'd get nominated for an Edgar Award, for crying out loud. Mystery writer. I'm not a mystery writer. You know what I mean? So,
Well, was your process and or expectations with Self-Made Widow different from Suburban Dicks?
The process, yes, was vastly different.
Okay.
My expectations in some ways were higher because I thought that it would ride the momentum of the first book, and it failed to do that miserably from a sales standpoint. I think it's, in some ways, I think it's a better book. And it's certainly much more confidently written in my mind than the first book was. Because the first book meandered tremendously. I cut over 100 pages from the original manuscript.
Shit.
Which was just garbage, just rambling garbage. And me not knowing how to write prose well enough, repeating things that the reader already knows, but the characters don't, and not understanding how to do that concisely to move forward. Your characters may not know something that the reader does know. That doesn't mean your characters have to go through the whole thing again because your reader already knows it, And the second book, well, the first book also was written in bits and pieces, ticky-tack. I didn't do it every day. There was sometimes I had paid work I had to do, so I did it, it's deadlines, all this other stuff. So sometimes I went, there's a few times I went like 2-3 weeks without writing the book, I started like in October of 2017, and I finished in January of 2019. So
Okay.
It took me 14 months. Both my parents died in 2018 and my dog died in 2018. So I had a lot of derailment happen also.
Yeah.
And in some ways, going back to the book was kind of a relief and a release, But Self-Made Widow, I started writing the week that we got locked down for COVID. I went to La Mole convention in Mexico City.
That's right. I remember.
We were closed down, and I flew into an empty Newark airport on Monday. I took the train home, and that week I had to start writing the manuscript because the outline had been approved by the editor. Right. So
Okay.
I started writing the manuscript, second week of March of 2020, and I finished the first draft by the first or second week of November of 2020.
So
I wrote the whole thing in 6 months.
Yeah, so basically half the time as Suburban Dicks, yeah.
But really almost only working on that. And it was a weird way to write because I'm in my corner of my bedroom, secluded, because we had five adults in the house at the time. My sister-in-law moved in with us. My son came back from college. My daughter was living here. So, and my wife, everyone stopped working but me. I'm up in the freaking corner of my bedroom typing. And so it was a very odd way to do it. So yeah, Erica, the process was completely different. My experience doing the first one made doing the second one much easier. And the irony is that now that I feel much more comfortable doing it, it's been over 3 years now, and I haven't been able to get that third one done for a variety of reasons.
But you're doing so many other things. Like you have other jobs coming in, though.
Yeah, but that's not about that. I have other writing I'm doing, but it's not about that because this is the kind of writing I want to be doing. you know.
Yeah.
So I had agent problems for over a year. I went down a couple roads on my own that I wanted to try going down that didn't work out for me, in terms of things I wanted to try writing. And it wasn't until last April that I hit on something that I thought could work, but I was in the process of leaving my agent and getting a new agent. So I had to then convince that agent. I had to present the things I had percolating in various forms, and get their feedback, because it can't just be what you want to write when you're in a position like I am. You have to have an agent that believes in you. You have to have an agent that wants to sell it, because they're the ones with the contact, the editorial publishing contacts. They're the ones who are going to top list the book that they're presenting to different buying editors. So we had to be on the same page, and he liked a couple of my ideas, but he ultimately agreed that this was probably the most comfortable sellable book of the ideas I had, but which made me happy. And one of the reasons I was happy to sign with him is that he also said, I really would like to see you explore a couple of these other things, because they're not mystery per se. They're not funny per se. They're, a little psychological horror here, a little road trip gun melee here. So, maybe if we can sell this, then there's a future where I can try doing a couple different things. This is a cozy mystery genre. This is like a PG to PG-13 rated mystery, whereas Suburban Dicks and Self-Made Widow are R-rated mysteries, and there is an absolute difference, and there's also a really strong market for this kind of thing, but you have to know who you're selling to also. This is almost exclusively being purchased by women over the age of 40, and some men, but predominantly women over the age of 40 buy this genre, so you have to make sure that you're telling your story right, because again, I've never been any other kind of writer but a professional writer. I always thought of that as a bit of a negative in my life. I really did, because from the very first thing I ever wrote, I wrote a comic to sell it, and it sold. So that was kind of it. Any other kind of writing I'd done had been for school assignments or my own stuff, never with the intention of it being published, because I was so young. My own stuff in college, my own stuff in high school. But by
You
the
went to
time
college, though, right?
What?
You went to college in the States.
Yeah, I went to college in Rutgers. I've been here since I was 4 years old.
I
I've
knew
been
that
here.
you came over, but I knew that you came over when you were young, but I didn't remember whether you went to like high school here.
Yeah, no, I started school here. I started first grade here. I don't remember first grade because I was learning English, so my brain lost a year, literally. But second grade, I started in New Jersey. We lived in Queens for 2.5 years, then we moved to Jersey in '68. So I've been in Jersey since '68. I went to second grade in Sayreville and all the way through. So I went to Rutgers, and I took a lot of writing classes because I was an English minor, and it was almost exclusively writing track. So I did a lot of writing, but it wasn't until I got a job at Marvel and sold my first comic to them a couple of years in that I really, really just wrote. And it was always for sale. It was never really not for sale. So I never got to explore different kinds of writing without the concept of can I sell this thing? The closest I came was some screenplay work I've done to try to kind of understand the format, and then I co-wrote a screenplay. Do you know Darren Sanchez, Erica? He used to be at
I know the name.
Marvel and Valiant.
I don't know him personally, but I know the name.
Darren and I co-wrote a screenplay that science fiction adventure screenplay, but it's just set like 20 years, 30 years in the future, and it didn't sell the usual. We had an agency that was all up on it, and they gave it to the top 12 producers, and that was the year that all these original sci-fi movies bombed, like 2012 I think it was. You go back, you look at the year, it's the year like Elysium came out, and 2 or 3 other bomb science fiction movies. So we got that script out just after all these movies had bombed, and not a single producer was interested in buying a sci-fi action flick, right? And it really turned me off to screenplays too, because you put a year and a half's worth of work co-writing something with somebody, and it literally just vanishes in 3 weeks. It's dead and gone in 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and it's like, why bother? Why, yes, if you sell it, you're getting, a $500,000, $1 million, and you're splitting it, blah, blah, blah. But I also got lots of friends who've been in Hollywood forever, and they make a sale, and their next sale is not for another 3 years,
Yeah,
So
it's very interesting, like that whole thing, and especially like you were talking about the agent for your novels. Like it's very interesting when I hear about people talking about their agents, and I'm like, yeah, I get the whole agent thing, and I understand that when it comes to prose, you have to have an agent. Like that's sort of a
you kind of have to have one for prose and for screenplay work,
yeah,
for
for
TV and
screenplay work
film
as
work.
well. Although I will say this, I can't say who the studio was, but I was commissioned to write a screenplay, and I did it, and I wrote it, and the producer said, and I still don't have an agent, but the producer was like, "This is incredible. I love it." And the reason why he'd originally asked me to write it was because he loved all my comics work. And when he gave me the job, I said, "You understand, I've never written a screenplay before, except for something in like the 8th grade, and it was really terrible." And he said, no, I understand that, but you understand storytelling, and that's what I want. I want a good story. So a girlfriend of mine who is a screenwriter, I went through the process of the formatting. I knew what the story was, and I knew how I would have written it as a comic. But then it's a matter of there's a completely different format, and there's a different flow and a different pacing. And I sat down with her, and we went through it, and she was so patient with me, and God bless you, Shalise. She was so patient with me about the process, and I'm like, "No, but you should do it this way." She's like, "Not in screenplays, honey." And I sent it out. The producer loved it, and then somehow from his office to his creative director's office, he got detoured, and the freelancer consultant decided that he was going to rip it out of his hands, put his 2 cents worth, and it got killed right then and there.
Oh yeah, it is.
And it's heartbreaking.
It's one of the most mind-bogglingly, frustratingly cutthroat, and useless creative processes that you can imagine, right? And it never really excited me or interested me the way it has so many other people that we know, and some of them have had success, and some of them measure
Not so
success
much.
by multiple year-long gaps in selling work.
Yeah.
So you're super psyched you sold a screenplay for $500,000 or whatever. Okay, but if you don't sell another one for 5 years, that means that you're making less than $100,000 a year. Can you live in LA off of less than $100,000 a year, et cetera, et cetera? You look at it from a real world perspective, and it's kind of rough. I mean, I wrote a pilot script for Suburban Dicks last year, because we optioned it and sold it. We optioned the book before it even published. We optioned it for film and for TV development at the same exact time as it was being bought for publishing. And the production company that bought it ended up I ended up bringing in a second production company, because that second production company had a deal with Netflix. So they took it together to Netflix, and Netflix wanted to do it. So Netflix optioned it. So I got an option fee. They optioned it for basically for 3 years. They optioned 18 months with an 18-month
Re-up.
re-up. So after 18 months, they hadn't even hired a writer to write the pilot yet. And a lot of this was during COVID too, mind you, but still, the Netflix still wanted to do it, so they re-upped it. So another 18 years. The pilot script
18
came
months,
in,
not years.
18 months. I'm
God.
sorry.
Oh,
You know what,
Jesus.
Erica? It's a nice Freudian
It feels
slip.
like 18 years.
It felt like 18 years.
Yeah.
The writer finally submitted a pilot script, which was
Awful.
flaming turd. It was just a flaming turd. That's what you get when you hire a guy who was born in Texas and has lived in LA for the last 20 years and has never set foot in New Jersey and has no clue what he's writing about, no feel for the people. It's all there in the book, for God's sakes. That's what I really didn't understand. It's all there. Steal some of the dialogue.
Honestly,
I don't know if he read the book, to tell you the truth. I think he did, but I don't think he did. He might have read it, but he read it the way Hollywood writers read stuff.
As opposed to actually
surface
reading
details,
the book.
as opposed to reading the book. And we knew Netflix was going to pass on it, and luckily they did. And they asked us for permission to be able to shop it around to other streamers, because Netflix would say they were okay with that, hoping to recoup some of the money that they paid for the option and for the awful pilot. And we said no, and they go, "What do you mean?" They go, "No, you're not shopping this pilot." I said, "We're not going to." I had the control over that, luckily. I said, "No, you're not shopping this pilot. This pilot's dead." But you can't sell it. I go, "No, we get the rights back in 5. And at that point, it was like, we get the rights back in 8 months. So in 8 months, I'll try again." And they go, "Good luck with that." Literally. And my manager said, "You're writing the script." And I didn't want to the first time around, because I thought that would just give people the reason to say no. No matter how good it was, it would just give someone the excuse to say no.
Because you're not in the guild?
No, because I never wrote one before. That's all they need. That's the only. Look, my experiences with Hollywood is all they need is a reason to say no, because their entire existence is based on covering their asses, not succeeding, but covering their asses to excuse failure.
What is it? Risk loss assessment, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I wrote the pilot script, and we got an excellent actor / showrunner writer attached to it, and then the strike happened. So we had deal offers starting to come in with this combo, and then the strike happened, and we had to wait. And then after the strike happened, the two of the production companies, we had 3 production companies interested. 2 dropped out. 1 still wanted to do it, but couldn't negotiate a deal with her. And so our deals were contingent on each other. We could have negotiated a deal for me, but it had to be the 2 of us, or they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So it fell through, and I was like, all right. So that fell through. We start shopping it again. So we started shopping it again. We got 4 producers willing to talk about it. So now I'm in the talking stage with 2, especially, and 2 pretty solid production companies with solid abilities to get it made. And so now I'm in that process of talking to all of them. Look at what we're talking about. This has been 4 years, I'm 62 years old. I don't, who.
Well, if you need a film or television editor, I know one.
Okay.
I sleep with him every night.
I know, but I don't know that I'm at the point where I need a film and television.
I know.
editor.
In 4 years, when it gets made.
My goal, my hope beyond hope is that not only does it get made, but the production's in New Jersey, because we're going to have all these new production facilities set up here. So they actually film in New Jersey.
What was it, Fort Monmouth or whatever that they said?
Yeah, there's like 3 different studios going up. There's a huge Netflix one going up in the old Fort Monmouth site. There's a mid-sized one going up in Carteret. And there's one in Jersey City that's being developed, and then there's another one in North Jersey, a smaller one that's being developed as well.
Well, I got the guy for you right upstairs.
He's upstairs. He's ready to do it. We'll get you in touch with whoever the streamer ends up being. First, I would just like to get another freaking option. At the very least, if they option it, even if nothing happens, you're getting a check for it.
But what's interesting is I was having a conversation with someone today, and I wrote like 3 20-page scripts between like midnight Tuesday and Wednesday 3:00 in the afternoon. So I wrote about like 60-page for 3 scripts, and some people are like, "Whatever, you wrote 60 pages."
No, that's ridiculous. That's a lot.
But see, this is the thing is I had a conversation with somebody today, and I said, I don't know if you understand because it was the whole like, well, you're just a writer, like whatever, like you just sit down and write. I was like, I don't think you understand how emotionally and physically draining it actually is, how mentally draining that is to write 3 different scripts on 3 completely different characters.
Yeah.
And try and make sure that you're getting everything right in this, and then everything
Not the
right.
least of which is we got to write full script now all the time, which sucks.
Well, that's the thing is
and-
I had to write
and you gotta
20
write- you
pages
gotta write
full
full
script
script.
for each. Yeah.
And that's so much more work than writing a plot and then dialoguing the pages after they get
After, yeah.
which was so much. I wrote at my height. I think it was 7 monthly books plus annuals plus a mini series in 1 year, and I also had a full-time job technically at Marvel because I was an editor at the time. So I never doing it was ludicrous and detrimental in many ways to me personally, emotionally, but also from a career standpoint and perception of me standpoint. It was not detrimental to my bank account, but I never would have been able to even remotely conceive of doing that if we had a write full script back then, like we're expected to. You know, I don't. You know, editors today have no clue because none of them have really worked plot first or been raised plot first, and a lot of writers don't have a clue because they haven't worked plot first either. It's just a far looser, more organic way to work.
The one
and
job
ultimately is easy.
The one job that I got that they just wanted breakdowns, like page 1, a little sentence, page 2, whatever. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, thank God, because I don't have to write full script. The artist insisted on full script. I was like,
yeah, because that's
son.
we've raised a generation of artists who have no independent thought or desire to be storytellers. They want everything told to them, and that's just so strange to me.
It's strange because I would assume, I mean, I've worked as a background artist. I haven't worked doing the full storytelling and everything because I worked in Neil's studio and everything. But from what I was seeing, it was you're given an opportunity to not only contribute, but to enhance and to put so much more of yourself into it. But when everything is dictated to you, I mean, and to this day, I always say this is full script, but this is just a suggestion. Like, if I write 5 panels on a page, but you can communicate the same information in 4, do it in 4. If you want 6, take 6, like, that kind of thing. But the fact that, and we were talking about this before, this idea of like people more or less dictating what it is, and you're more or less just illustrating panel by panel, and it doesn't feel like it has the same organic storytelling to it.
It doesn't. I feel the stiffness in the superhero books that Marvel and DC have put out over the last 10, 15 years. I feel it. As a reader, I feel it. It really started with Bendis's scripts being what they were, and I really respect his writing, but I don't necessarily respect his writing for mainstream superhero comics. It evolved it into something which again goes to really commenting on how good he is because he was so immediately and quickly influential, but it created this expectation of mundanity in the process, in the art, in the panels. It bled its way now to the following creators, the subsequent generation of creators, many of them working now. The running joke about Tom King is not a joke. 9 panels and people staring out windows with rain on them. It's the actual book. And it's exhausting. And I think Tom King's also immensely talented, but by the same token, I don't think I want him really writing a superhero comic book because to me, I'm still 8 years old. I want superhero comics to be about big, exciting adventure. I don't want it to be about depression. I don't want it to be about
Yeah, those comics.
Superheroes at post-traumatic camps. I
And
lost
'cause-
my earbud.
those, but those comics are out there too. You know, I mean, if you want something like that to any ilk, like you can find any. And this is something we've said in the past show, man. I mean, I can't think of a genre that hasn't been covered in comic books. So I mean, I do see your point as far as that's intriguing, man. Do you think that? Like, because I know speaking to artists and other writers that we've, especially in some combos, they will say specifically, they just more gave them an outline and worked like that. But I can't think of that ever being said about a Marvel book. I'll say that much. These are books for other companies, not for either of the big two. So why do you think it is? I mean, because I obviously you see it in some of the smaller. Do you think? Why do you think it is they're willing to do that and haven't adopted that as well, like the other ones have? I mean, because you think it's just mainly because it's creator owned?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to. I can't speak to the reasons why anything has happened the way it has happened over the last 25 years because I've not been a part of it. So if you ask me what was done and why it was done between 1985 and 1995 at Marvel, I'll tell you in detail. If you ask me, you know, what were some of the reasons and thinking that were going into decisions that were being made between 1998 and 2003, I could tell you some of it. I've been so completely removed from the process and in many ways from the industry for so long that I don't even care. I don't even think about it. 2004, Mike Martz asked me to write Cable and Deadpool full script, and I said, okay. I don't want to, but okay. So I started writing full script. That's because Bill Jemis wanted things full script, and that was that. So I started writing full script. You know, the only books I've really been able to do plot first. I did a bunch of DC books plot first for the Convergence series they did.
I was going to say, what about your Red Robin?
Red Robin was full script. Mike Martz was the editor. He wanted full script. So that was full script. But it was full script. But I worked with two artists that Freddie Williams on Robin and then Marcus Toe on Red Robin, where we had really good synergy between us, really good connections, and felt very fluid and loose. And Mike trusted the artist too, which goes a long way. The editor has to trust the artist also.
Yeah.
So if the editor trusts the artist and the editor trusts you, then you can loosen up a little within your full script. You know. But 9 times out of 10, I don't know about you, Erica, but 9 times out of 10, I often am writing a script without even knowing who the artist is. You know, I wrote Cable #1 without knowing who the artist was going to be. I knew by issue #2, but I didn't know with issue #1. You know, I wrote a Silver Surfer story just now for the Blood Hunters thing, and I didn't know Patrick Zircher was going to be drawing it. If I knew, I actually would have loosened up ridiculously because Pat and I've done 70 comic books together, so we totally know how to loosen it up between us. You know,
I think it's interesting because I don't. The one story that I'm going to be working on that hasn't been announced yet. I made a suggestion about. I gave a suggestion of a few artists, you know, like my top 3 kind of thing. And I never expected them to actually choose somebody from that top 3, and they did. So I was halfway through issue #1 when I found out who the artist was going to be, and then I was like, okay, so let me go back and tweak a couple of things. And this is an artist that I've worked with in the past. Let me go back and tweak a couple of things. For the Daredevil that I'm doing now, I'm working with Mike Dowling, and Mike Dowling and I did 6 issues of Hallows' Eve together. So now we're doing a 4-issue Daredevil, and I'm like, oh, it's Mike. You know, we already have a rapport. We've already worked together on stuff. So I'll put in the script, Mike, you know the deal. If you want to do this, if you want to do this as a spread, do it as a spread. If you want to do it as 2 singles, it's up to you, man. I trust you, kind of thing.
And that goes a long way towards that sense of spontaneity and freshness that we were talking about before. There's a stiffness to many things because they're so writer driven, and often the artists don't want to have to consider changing things, or they don't want to have to consider coming up with the flow. You know what I mean? and often you don't know the artist you're going to be working with, so it's hard to write. It's hard to write your full script to that, so you end up just writing it, period, and then
You're
you
almost
end up
writing it generically.
Yes, and then you got to think about tailoring it, trying to tailor the script afterwards to the art. Where can I tweak? What did or didn't work in terms of the balloons and the dialogue? I got to move dialogue from one panel to the other. That's why I like the plot first method, because it's just so much looser that I don't have to micromanage that flow. I can let the flow be more spontaneous. Just having a conversation online with Gail Simone about this stuff, that she hates plot first. Hates. I believe it was 7 hates with capital letters. Like, how many have you written? Like 3? I'm like, all right, well, I've written hundreds. And she goes, hundreds? I go, Gail, from 85 to 2004, I only ever wrote plot first. So I've written 15, 17 years of my career was plot first, and 15, 17 years of my career has been full script.
Yeah.
I think I'm qualified to judge for myself anyway, the strengths and weaknesses of both of the formats, right? Because I don't know that there are that many people working right now who have done as much in both as I have in that capacity. Like, I mean, of course, there are plenty of other people who've written more in the last 20 years full script, but none of them ever wrote plot first because they weren't born yet. So I just feel that the thinking at the companies is very very tunnel visioned about this, and I think the thinking in the creative industry, in the creative community, is very tunnel visioned about this. It's very much a generational thing.
Do you think it's because of the whole, like, we're a giant conglomerate now?
No, I really don't, because it all happened before we were a giant conglomerate. Now, it happened. It happened because it was a fiat decree by a president who wanted things a certain way, who had little to no comic book experience, and wanted things a certain way. So all the editors fell in line and did it that way. And then that was combined with a slate of incoming writers who wanted to write that way, because that was how they wrote. So they became very popular, and they became, the go-to.
And that became the standard, yeah.
And that standard as a result,
Yeah.
And then what happens is that the artists then all have to work that way too, and then it becomes the standard for them. And so 20 years later, we're talking about a generational shift in talent. Whole new generation came in the last 8 years or so, sometimes supplanting the previous ones, sometimes just merging with the previous ones who are still working, and that they have an expectation for how they want things to go.
I will say this, I'm working with an artist now on a project, and this artist doesn't even read my script. They do whatever they want, and to the point where it's not making sense.
That's weird. That's weird.
And I've said to the editor, I was like, look, is it possible to get them, like, on task a little bit, because the storytelling isn't 100% there, and where we have to be at the end as the edict from editorial, we're not getting there.
Yeah,
but it's so and so, you can't tell so and so no. And I'm like, but it's
yes, of course you can.
I was like,
well, whatever editor said that, no matter who it was, is a weak ass editor, because the answer,
you'll get an email later.
The answer is, of course you can tell them.
Well, I mean, like, I'm having to dialogue.
It's their choice to quit, and it's your choice to fire them. Those are the two choices. But they have a job to do, and that job is to tell the story. If they're not telling the story well, then tell the story well or leave. Because I only worked with one artist who willfully ignored my plots, and I didn't care at all, because it was phenomenal fun. And that was Steve Scroce on Gambit. So for the first year of Gambit, we talk about a story, he had brought a lot of ideas into the mix, and I was more than happy to work with him that way. Had really interesting, fun character ideas of villains that he wanted to do, and I would do a plot, and his pencils would often be its own story, like like literally just he got my beginning and he got to my end, but everything in the middle didn't get there. It went its own way. And sometimes it was a lot more work to try to get it to make sense. And other times it was just total fun because it just was going on its own kind of larkish way and having a good time. Very energetic. Steve Scroce is a super energetic storyteller. And that was 12 issues of that. The only issue he's stuck to really tightly was an issue that I told him, this is what we're doing, because it was issue number 10 of Gambit, which was a story I really liked, self-contained story that I really liked, and wanted to make sure that this was the story. And he was cool with it because he was getting to draw a lot of fun stuff. He was getting to draw Sergeant Fury in World War II and all this other stuff. So I'm not that used to it. McGuire has done it to me a couple times too, and I never minded. But it's not easy to find an artist who's going to tell a better story than the one you came up with. All right, or at least it hasn't been that easy in my experience. Kevin and Steve Scroce are two artists who can usually tell a better story than I came up with. So you let them go. But this is different. He's not telling a better story.
Well, the other thing is that there's a very specific story that needs to be told because this is for wider continuity and everything.
Oh God, it's your Blood Hunters crap. Okay, now we can.
And I'm just like, no, I didn't say it was that.
Well,
I didn't say it was
isn't that part of the whole wider story that you're involved in right now?
I'm involved in a lot of stories. I'm involved in a lot of stuff, Fabian. I thought
everything was Blood Hunters right now.
No, I'm working on Blood Hunters. I'm working on the next whatchamacallit, what's coming after Blood Hunters. I'm working on something completely different and completely launching anew in December. I'm working on.
Is this all from Marvel? Is everything from Marvel right now?
No, not everything.
Okay, good.
Because I have Rat City, which is an ongoing for Image.
Okay.
I'm the first woman to ever write Spawn. I'm a historical figure now.
Is that a Spawn thing? Is that a McFarlane thing?
Hell,
Erica, I'm clueless. I'm like,
it's okay.
Know it's
I mean,
Rat City is a new book in the Spawn universe.
Okay, I've read exactly half an issue of Spawn, and that was in 1992. I've never read a single one.
It is okay. No, but Spawn, I'm doing the ongoing for Rat City, so that's obviously completely different. But
that's great. Well, congratulations to break into that world.
Thank you.
That's a real man boy world, isn't it? The Spawn universe.
You know what's very funny is that a lot of people who work at McFarlane, like you've got the editor-in-chief Thomas, but then you've got Yvette and you've got Bonnie and you've got Shannon, and a lot of the people that work at McFarlane are women.
Yeah, but that's staff. What about readers?
Well, there's a good amount of female readers too, because I was not aware of this, and then they had me do a live cast with them, and they said, okay, we're going to open it up to people watching to ask questions. And there were a lot of women asking questions like, oh, are you going to do this? And blah, 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 blah. And what's the story going? And we're really excited to see what a woman's perspective is going to be on the Spawn universe and stuff. And I was like, wow, there are more, because I always thought I was one of the few women who read Spawn, especially when I was, in high school and college, because Spawn started in 92 and I was in college in 95. So I started, reading a bunch of stuff because one of my friends who lived in the apartment above me would go to the comic shop once a week, and he had a car. So I was like, oh, I'm jumping in the car for the week, kind of. And I would go and I would get Spawn, and everybody at the shop would be like, what's this chick doing buying Spawn? So I'd be like, why don't you pick
back then everybody was in the shop saying, what's this chick doing, period. But I hear what you're saying. Spawn, I honestly, probably just a flawed perception on my part, because I don't pay attention to that franchise, but I never ever thought it would have had a proportionate percentage of female readers. and I knew back in the 90s what books had strong female readerships and which ones didn't. And
Of course, it was
you could
Gambit
tell
because
back
you
then.
know.
Well,
hot
yeah, that
kitchen.
was late 90s, but like, you know, we knew X-Men had a really big female readership. We knew Punisher didn't. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you kind of had a good gauge and sense for that perspective. But nowadays, there's thankfully so many more women reading comics that you know, even mainstream Marvel DC stuff that thankfully you can't necessarily figure that out
Well,
automatically anymore. And even better, all the man boys are all angry about that because girls ruin their comics.
You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
My mom loved the Atom. Loved the Atom. Would read.
Oh, that's cool. That's
and
funny.
when she's you said you were what, 68?
I was born in 61, but I moved
born in
to
61.
Jersey in 68.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're
telling
born
me
in
that
61.
you're telling me you were in high school when I was writing X-Men. So
No, so I was gonna say she's at least 15 years older than you are.
Okay.
And she used to love reading the Atom. She used to love reading I think it was Justice Society, or was it Justice League then?
Justice
I don't know.
League. That was the 60s. So she's talking about the Gardner Fox and Julie Schwartz edited books. Adam was written by Gardner Fox and drawn by Gil Kane.
And I love Gardner Fox simply because I love Hawkgirl and I love the Hawks in the storyline. So I love Gardner Fox and how, you know, he had like the Egyptian angle and then he did this and that. I mean, but it's funny because, you know, she would tell me, like, you know, women were reading comics and a lot of it was Archie, but they were also reading superhero comics too.
Yeah, they were. In the 60s, they started. I think that was one thing that caught the Marvel guys off guard, in that they started to see how many more women were reading their comics, starting with girls, because so many more younger readers back then.
Yeah.
But they were. There's always been a percentage. It was always a small percentage. I think that percentage has grown quite a lot in the last 20 years, which is great. But there always was. And you know, comic shops just, I think, turned the medium into more of a man boy, man cave mentality, not less of one. And it's only been, I think, in the last 5 years that there's been substantially more push on that, you know?
Yeah, no. Firstly,
the shops are starting to have a better clue.
Yeah, like let the
Their
females in,
ability
dude.
to sell the win.
I don't get why. And I just gotta say, on your note of Rat City, Erica, I have not had. I need to read it. I haven't gotten a chance to, but I have heard from Dave, through a podcast that he listens to, that it is apparently the best written Spawn comic in quite some time. It's what somebody said that like actively does stuff, like they focus on Spawn on their podcast.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what they
the
said.
The first issue went to second printing.
I got it first.
I was really excited about it. And then somebody posted, it's just because we were curious. And I'm like, I still got your $3.99.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares what the reason is? Seriously.
I was like, I don't care. It still went to second printing. I'm fine with that.
Eric, a guy waited online for 2 hours in San Diego Comic-Con in 1992, I think it was, to tell me I sucked. And everybody hanging around the tables like, whoa, that's all. He waited, no comic to sign, nothing. Just wanted to tell me I sucked. And he left, and everyone was like, you're all right with that? I go, how can he know I suck unless he's been buying the book every single month? So I already got his money. What do I care?
And that's the thing. I don't care if you're curious, or somebody else wrote, I didn't have high expectations. And I was like, well, why didn't you have high expectations? And they said, because I've never read anything you've ever written before. I'm like, okay. I still got your $3.99.
Oh, Erica, I've read quite a bit. Yeah, I have high expectations. I do, just to be clear. But I've read a lot of what you've written, and it's all been very, very good. I have high expectations when I grab certain books.
Shouldn't they have had no expectations because they've never read your work? How do you go into not knowing a person's work and having low or high expectations of them?
I don't know.
Wouldn't the expectations be born of actually reading the material and then having an expectation of you? So if it's really good, if it's really good, they have high expectations of you, which you're sure to not meet in the future because that's just the reality of our lives, right? And if they didn't like it, you have low expectations, which means down the road you might be able to produce something that exceeds their low expectations, so you feel really good about yourself.
Well, I was gonna say, if the bar is really low, I'm gonna hit it.
Yeah.
It just has to be really low.
That's what I always tried to set as a really low bar for myself. Right? And I think I've succeeded. I've set a really low bar for myself because it just makes it so much easier to exceed their low expectations. You know?
Pretty much.
I never nominated for a single award in comics, and I write my first book, I got nominated for an award.
Wait.
And that really bugged me because it felt like it created a set of expectations I did not want to have to be burdened by.
I still can't believe that you haven't been put in the Eisner Hall of Fame or anything like that, nominated for
Why
that.
would I? I'm not old enough yet, am I?
No, they're
I'm 62.
they're nominating people for the Eisner Hall of Fame that, I don't know, maybe they died
Shouldn't there be
early.
an age limit to that? I'm only 62. I'm never gonna. Erica, look at me in the eyes. I'm never
I'm
going to be
nominated.
nominated for the Eisner Hall of Fame.
I'm
Never.
gonna nominate you
No,
for the Eisner Hall of Fame.
Let me backtrack from that. I am never going to be voted into the Eisner Hall.
I will nominate you for the
Never.
Eisner Hall of Fame. I'm writing in my book. I'm writing it down.
I fully agree. I mean, Fabian, with what you've done and what you've contributed to comics, I think it's kind of odd to think that you wouldn't at some point be within that. Unless you make a bunch of people mad. Did you make a bunch of people mad, Fabian?
No, not at all.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, not nearly as many as I should have.
If you're going purely based on output, purely based on comics that how many comics you've written, how long you've been in the industry, the different positions within the industry that you have held, purely based on that, there's no reason why you should not be nominated.
Never.
I know, but you're saying why would I? But I'm giving you the reasons. The output.
No. And I'm telling you that all of that taken into account, they don't know that. They're
How do they not know
aware of that.
How though?
Because the majority of the people who would be, I don't know, I don't even know what the process is, to tell you the truth. So someone nominates you, and then a committee of people have to vote to see if you're placed on the ballot, right? That committee of people will be comprised of a variety of ages, and they will either not know and or not respect, and that combination would prevent my name from getting on the ballot. And even if I get on the ballot, the majority of the people who will be voting would either not know or not respect. Guaranteed. I like, and I could care less.
It doesn't mean that I shouldn't try.
Well, I appreciate and love you saying that, but by the same token, I just want you to be aware that I could care less about being in the eyes.
But you know how I always want to prove you wrong. So if I
know,
and
if you could prove me wrong in that regard, that'd be pretty funny. And I'd also need to know who's in the Eisner Hall of Fame and who isn't, because then I would probably give you a list of people who I think should be in before me.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of people who like passed away that, like, you know, like Darwin Cook or somebody like that, I'm sure, or like Tim Sale, I'm sure that they've, you know, been put in because of that. You know, obviously they did phenomenal work, but, you know, they weren't you're talking about like it's an age thing. They, you know, passed.
I get the excusing of that. I get ignoring that aspect of it, you know, and you should ignore that aspect of it. The creator passes, it gets dies early. But it's just, I've always felt this way, and maybe it's because I was on staff at Marvel, and we used to have to deal with a lot of bullshit, a lot of perceptions, negative perceptions of us, and we did a lot of negative things too. But I always had a bit of a bunker mentality about it, and there was always from the very beginning of my career, there was always a um, a sense of the people who work and the people who judge the work. And I always wanted to be the person who worked. I never wanted to be the person judging. And when you talk to me about the Eisner Hall of Fame, all I think of is the people judging. That's all I think about. And not enough of them actually do the work. Not enough of them actually did the work. Not enough of them actually are still doing the work. Not enough of them are going to be doing the work. So I always take it with an incredible grain of salt, because the amount of judgment that I felt for the first 10 years of my career really kind of colored me negatively predisposed toward that mentality, the awards mentality, the critique mentality. I just never, my job was to type, and I typed,
Well, your job was to tell stories, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
And you still do.
Yeah. I don't, I like it. Just that level. I mean, look, being in something like that, of course, is an honor, but I have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt if I don't respect the process by which people are placed in that honor.
You're Eminem at the Grammys.
I mean? What?
You're Eminem at the Grammys.
I guess. Yeah. Didn't he? He had like. Yeah, I think I almost remember that. I haven't watched the Grammys in 25 years, but yeah.
No, but like he said, I don't mind losing out to this person, that person, and the next person. But when I'm losing out to, and I forget who he said, he's like, then that's where I draw the line. So,
Yeah,
look, you did win an Oscar.
Here's the deal. Erica. If Scott Lindell gets into the Eisner Hall of Fame before me, then we're gonna have a problem. I'm not even
going to mention his name.
I find it, it's interesting. As you get older, you start to think a little more about, I just, how does that happen? I don't even know. Like, how did, I actually, a year or two ago, I saw something about the nominations, and I was like, how does that happen? Louis Simonson got in. I was like, that's, thank you. You got Louis Simonson in the goddamn Hall of Fame. Good. And I thought, well, how did that even happen? I have no clue. When I was at Marvel at San Diego Con every year and they were doing that award thing, we never went. We went out partying, and we went out hanging out. We went out doing things. We never went to those awards, mostly because we were so we were so poo-pooed by them, especially back then in the early 90s, that we just said, okay, forget it. We don't care. Like, whatever, individual creators may have cared, but as a whole, we didn't care.
The genuine, the general gist, yeah.
And I was, because I was on staff for so long, it was not that I was a freelance writer. I never thought of it from the standpoint of me as a writer. I always thought about it as a standpoint of me with the company,
Yeah.
And that formulated the totality of how I look at it now,
Which I think is, I mean, it makes a good point, because nowadays most everybody is freelancer. Like, they're not staff.
Yeah.
And I think the mindset is very different, and it has to be,
It is.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I get it. And I get for a long time, like, this idea of like the awards were like very highfalutin, and, you guys just do, silly superhero comics, people in tights, and one of the things that I've always kind of had a chip on my shoulder about is when someone says to me, you're at a party and you have to introduce yourself, I always call it like sorority rush, hi, where are you from? What's your name? And, what's your favorite color, kind of thing. So like when you're at a party and you're doing that, people always say, oh, what do you do? And I say, I'm a writer. And they say, oh, what do you write? And I take a beat and I think to myself, is this the type of person where if I say I write comics and graphic novels, they're going to say, people still read comics?
Yeah. Wow.
Or is this the type of person who's going to go, that's so cool?
That hasn't changed in 40 years.
Well,
That's the same
I'm
exact
happy and sad about
mentality
that.
that it was back then too. That
And I'm happy and
it's
sad
no
about
different, you know. And ultimately, I guess because of my age and because of my suburban existence that has not been predicated on being a part of the creative community, like my suburban existence has nothing at all to do with writers, artists, you know, storytellers, nothing, not at all, and hasn't for 30, 40 years. It's almost like I had two separate lives. I commuted into Manhattan, worked for Marvel, did what I did, and then I came home and had my suburban life with my friends here and my wife's friends and blah blah blah. You know, that hasn't changed. I've endured that my entire life, Erica. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't change. You still get that. You still get they're still doing comic books. Yeah, what do you think the frickin' movies you saw last year were based on? You know, like,
I will say this. My mom, we were leaving the veterinarian's office, and my mom said proudly, and this was literally not even 6 months ago, she said proudly, "Do you know that my daughter's writing Spawn?" And there was a moment where I thought to myself, I would have loved for you to have been this excited when I started my career 15 years ago.
mm-hmm.
That's when I needed this enthusiasm.
Yeah, but look, even our parents are what's the phrase, coattail riders. You
Yes.
know, my father never wanted me to have anything to do with the creative industries and comics. He wanted me to be an engineer. That my hatred of math and my inability to do math kind of got in the way, but he didn't want to see that. But heaven forbid, the second I sold my first comic to Marvel, he wrote a letter to the president of Marvel Comics praising my comic with a pseudonym on it. I found out after the fact. I wanted to kill him.
That's
Like,
pretty funny.
He's so clueless that he's writing a letter to James Galton about Cyforce #9, as if James Galton even knows 5 titles we published back then. You know what I mean? Like, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, I don't know, something else. Captain America. Okay, yeah, and that was it. That's all he knew.
Yeah.
But he's praising Cyforce #9 to the president of Marvel, and I'm like, oh yeah, now that I sold the comic, all of a sudden you're thrilled with what I did.
I will say this though. I think and I've sort of made this turn with my mom. And my mom was supposed to go to art school, and my mom was an illustrator, and she used to do spot illos for Star Trek fanzines in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, cool.
And everything. And
I always saw a bunch of them.
You probably did, actually. If you see anything signed KJC, that's my mom. There was a story that she did where it was about Spock when he was a little boy, and she used my brother as the model for that.
Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
And I think that it was a very immigrant mentality. My grandmother is like, you cannot go away to school. You've got to stay in the city and this, that, and the next thing. So my mom ended up becoming a nurse. And when I first started saying, screw this, I'm going to do a creative career. I mean, I worked in an ad agency and did, but I said, I'm going to focus on a creative career. I think there was a tinge of resentment that she had, because I had that gumption to say, no, this is what I'm going to do. And I think there was a little bit of resentment in the beginning of my career because of that, because I know deep down she's like, man, I should have stood up to my mom and said, no, I'm going to art school.
Different times, different,
I know.
Yeah.
But you also know
It's
that
hard.
that sticks in your craw sometimes.
That sticks in your craw. Yeah.
But now she's so excited to tell the vet tech that I was writing Spawn.
And tell her, Mom, at the very least, say Daredevil, since that's the character most people know.
I know.
It's a character civilians might know a little more now than Spawn.
She said Spawn, and she said Hallows Eve, and I'm like, Mom.
I always thought Spawn just sounds gross. It just sounds iffy to me. Just like I work on Spawn. It just doesn't trip off the tongue.
I will say this.
I never liked it. He only picked the name because it was SP, right? For Spider-Man. He only picked it because it had SP on it.
God.
Didn't he?
I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure.
I thought one of the original things they all did is pick title names that were going to be close alphabetically to the books they were so popular on, because then they'd be racked
in the back, yeah.
alongside. So Spawn is Spider-Man, and Youngblood is X-Force, and Wildcats is X-Men, and all of it was going to be placed near each other.
Is that which Blade is near X-Men for Silvestri?
Silvestri's first book was called Cyberforce.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So he broke that one.
That was
And Eric Larson didn't give a crap about that kind of stuff. So his book his book originally was going to be Dragon, but he trademarked Savage Dragon. And Jim didn't give a crap about that kind of stuff. So Shadowhawk was its own thing, you know. But I think Todd, Rob, and Jim definitely were thinking along those lines, because they're very smart marketing guys. They really are. So they were thinking along those lines because it's smart marketing.
Well, I will tell you this: our Spawn is not called Spawn in our book. He's called the Deviant.
Okay, so why isn't the book called the Deviant?
I don't know.
It's rat. I mean,
It's
I don't know why
because of the section of the Bowery that he lives in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's from
That's a good
Spawn number 42. In the original Spawn number 42, they refer to the section of the Bowery that Al Simmons is living in the alley that he's living in with all the Vietnam vets that are unhoused. That's called Rat City. And so our story takes place in 2111, but there's still Rat City, but Rat City is now like all of the Bowery.
So it's future world.
Yes.
And Erica, look, I love you, but you just have to understand that all that information just came out this year because it had gone in this year.
I know.
So just right out. I'm like, it actually kind of surprises me sometimes how completely like out of touch I am with who's doing what, the books that are coming out. I see your name on a book, and I know that usually 2 months after it's come out, I go, oh, you know, I go on my Hoopla app to see if a trade paperback has been posted yet on my Hoopla app, so I can put it.
You're
on my
actually
digital
reading
queue.
something that I did?
No, I'm waiting to see more trade paperbacks on my Hoopla app.
Okay.
The Hoopla app is a library app, and I download digital books from it. It's the only place that I even read Marvel stuff. I don't even read DC stuff for the most part. Barely.
Well, I will tell you, the X-23 trade paperback, the Hallows Eve trade paperback, and soon the Daredevil trade paperback are all going to be up there.
Yeah, Daredevil definitely will be. Hallows Eve will be too? Okay.
The trade paperback for Hallows Eve came out in October, so it should be up there.
Yeah, I look every few months, and I put a bunch of stuff in my queue. I got a lot on my queue because I only read a couple of months. But I will get to you jump the list. You jump the list because if I see something you did, I want to read it. So
that's very sweet.
I did a signing at a comic book shop near me in Lawrence.
Final Boss. I was just there.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You told me you were coming. That's right. Yeah. And it's the first time I'd been in a comic shop in about a year and a half. And I'm gonna go back next week, not because Cable number 4 is coming out, but because Savage Sword of Conan number 2 magazine is coming out. And I really want to
ask him to get you a sandwich from the place down the street.
Which one? There's a bunch.
There's a specific place. He emailed me and he said there's a bakery around the corner that's really good, but I don't really have a sweet tooth. He said, but there's a sandwich.
Ginger Peach is the bakery right next
Ginger
to it.
Peach. Yeah.
Ginger Peach is one of the best bakeries in the state. It's phenomenal.
And then he said that there was a sandwich place that's also nearby that was really good, and I got a really good wrap from them.
There's a sandwich place around there called Fakasha, but I don't think they're around anymore. I don't know.
No, it wasn't that because I would have.
I'm not on that main street that often. I'm usually in Princeton. That's my go-to because it's so close to me.
I gotta say though, if you're gonna bring up Savage Sword of Conan number 2, I know Richard Pace has got some work in there, and we got Richard Pace coming up.
Yes, he did the lead Conan story.
Yeah, we got a PanCon coming up that'll be available over on the Patreon with him, as well as a whole other group of artists, one of them being Mike Ruth as well, and they're gonna come and live draw some madness.
Look at you sliding in the promo so smooth like that. Well done.
Thank you.
That was good.
I mean,
Eric, promo, like that promo was on ice, man. You just slid right. You didn't have to read it off a teleprompter or nothing.
Dude, I don't do
That was
anything off of
good.
I come up with everything right off the bat, Fabian. Don't you know? Like there is no there's no look, I don't yeah, no, dude, it just rolls. And yeah, man, I know I got a lot of great
So
creators
yes,
coming up over
I'm
here.
because I'm following Patrick's writing and art on the Solomon Kane story, and because I think Titan's done some really good Conan stuff. I'm an old Conan kid who let my Conanisms lapse a long time ago, but I'm original Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith. 10 years old, my brother going, "What the hell are you getting this for?" And me going, "I think it looks really cool." So I'm old world Conan from back then. So when I saw they were doing some new stuff, and Jim Zub was writing one of the books, and I like Jim's, so I started to take a look at it on my Hoopla app. But I got the actual magazine because I wanted it, and it made me feel like I was 14 years old again. It really made me feel like I buying I bought. Barry Windsor Smith did this classic black and white story called Red Nails with Roy Thomas in the magazine at that time was called Savage Tales. This was before Savage Sword of Conan even started as a magazine. So Savage Tales 2 and 3 were the adaptation of Red Nails, and Barry Windsor Smith did the ink himself on it. He hadn't inked himself with the comic that much because of the monthly schedule. So this was, I think, after he'd already left the monthly book, if I recall right. I got Savage Tales #2 on the boardwalk at Asbury Park, Erica, begging my parents for 75 cents because I think it was 50 cents.
It's an
or 75
oversized.
cents. Well, it was a black and white magazine.
Yeah.
And it was more expensive than a regular comic, which I think at that time was only 15 cents, right? And my parents were like, 50 cents or 75 cents? That's like, are you kidding me? That I might as well have been asking them for a gold bar or something, you know? And they got it for me, and it just blew my mind because it was so good. His art on that was so good. So this is me at like, I think I was 11 when that book came out, when Savage Tales #2 came out. So I was like a Conan kid for a while. And then once Barry Windsor Smith left, I didn't stay with it for that much longer after that. But I always loved the black and white magazine because it had some phenomenal artists. The Philippine guys were all working on it in the early 70s. Alfredo Alcala and Tony DeZuniga and Ernie Chan, and they were working their asses off. The amount of work and detail they put into it. So when I saw Titan was doing the magazine and I knew Patrick was going to have a story in it, it's like, all right, I got to check it out. And it made me feel like I was 14. I'm reading that magazine, the package, everything about it felt like I was that age again. That's how good a job I think they did with it. You know, Jim wrote a prose story in the first issue. So, and that Conan's another one. I did a Conan issue with Kurt Busiek for Dark Horse way back when, but it was only one issue, and it's working with Kurt. So when you're working with Kurt, it's like 90% Kurt and 10% you. So and I know because we've got a new Image book coming out in a couple months. So
Free agents.
So I think Conan's another one. You asked me earlier. So Star Trek and Conan are probably two. I think I wouldn't mind getting my hands on a little bit of that. But it's always, for me right now, it's always like, yeah, if I write a story, okay, I'm good. If I write a 10-page story, okay, I'm good. I wrote a 10-page Silver Surfer story for the Blood Hunt thing, and Patrick's drawing it now. He's almost done with it now. It's like, okay, Silver. I wrote Silver Surfer in little bits in Cable and Deadpool and in New Warriors, but I never wrote a Silver Surfer story. So I was like, okay, that's another one I knock. That's another pin I knocked down. That's pretty.
I wanted to write Beta Ray Bill for so long, and they would never let me write Beta Ray Bill. And then there was the Marvel Zombies last year, and I said, can I write a Beta Ray Bill story? And they're like, for the zombies? That's strange. And I said, I want to write the last ballad of Beta Ray Bill. And they're like, do it. And the whole thing is that he can't be turned into a zombie. And he has to watch all of his friends die.
Oh, that's just pathetic. That's just so lacking in hope and aspiration.
No, it doesn't. Because what happens is he starts going world to world. And as he's going world to world, he's fighting zombies, but he's also picking up the heroes of those worlds and finding survivors and he basically at the end has created like his own version of the Avengers again, but it's all different people from all different worlds. So it's like they're all freaks like him. They're all different, and they're all there to now have hope and
that, Erica Schultz, is why you're getting so much work.
That
why?
was-
Because I wrote a Beta Ray Bill story?
Correct me if I'm
No,
wrong, that
because
was
you can take their nihilistic deconstructionist bullshit and turn it into something hopeful and positive
because correct me
with
if
a
I'm wrong, that
little
was
bit
issue-
bit of city edge to it. That's why.
but that was issue
That's
2,
why.
correct?
Marvel Zombies 2, yes.
Yeah,
I do have to
I
say I loved seeing Nelson Daniel was the artist on it, and Beta Ray had Stormbreaker in one hand, he had Mjolnir in the other, and he uppercuts somebody with Stormbreaker and then smashes their head with Mjolnir. I was like, yes, he's just kicking everybody's butt with both of them, because once Thor was bitten, he was no longer worthy. So
Sure.
Yeah, I can't lie.
Yeah.
Like when I picked that particular issue up, I was just like Erica Schultz, Doug Wagner, and then I think Gail Simone was the other
Gail
one
did a
on
really
that.
great Fantastic
Yeah,
Four
and
story.
I was like, boom, boom, boom. I was like, that's yeah. We need to get Gail on the show. We got Doug coming up here pretty soon because he's getting ready to drop that plastic prequel. So we got Wagner coming up here in the near future as well. But to see those three names, all collectively together, that was yeah. You should have thrown one in there, Fabian. Have you ever done it? You've never done any Marvel Zombie stuff, have you?
I can't even. I've been writing for 35 years. I don't even have the words to tell you how much I don't care about Marvel Zombies. I lack the words. I lack the skill to tell you how much I don't care about that. I've never read a single one.
I mean,
And
I
it's not
love
that
George.
look,
love
I'm sure
George
that there's some
Romero.
great stories, and I'm sure that there's some great art. I just don't care. I don't care about that stuff. Look, I am up to here with multiverse stories now. I'm up to here. I've written enough of them myself that I don't want to see 500 things now being that. So Marvel Zombies is just, it feels so gimmicky to me that even if good stories are coming out of it, to me it's just coming out of something that doesn't interest or excite me. You know?
I will say this about the multiverse stuff. I'm doing a commercial comic where they're doing multiverse, and I'm like, this is a commercial comic. It's 85 pages total, and this is where you want to go. There's so many more interesting things, but I got the brief, and that's in the brief, and I'm just like,
okay,
that's what the client wants.
Yeah. I did a bunch of those for Marvel too, custom comics that nobody ever even
The custom
saw.
comics, yeah.
I did a 75-page graphic novel for Black Panther and Lexus. I did a 80-page graphic novel for a pharmaceutical company where we created all new characters for them. None of that stuff sees the light of day. I was doing all of that like 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago.
I will say this. I got to do, for Citizen Watches, they have a solar-powered watch, and I got to do a cool Storm and Thor series story for Citizen Watches
That's good.
that I got to do, which was cool.
That's good. I got to do some fun ones. I get to write Ms. Marvel.
Did you do the Harley Davidson Captain America one?
No.
Okay.
I did the infamous what the hell was it called? The one that with the military company that got pulled from
Lockheed?
Lockheed. Yeah, no, not Lockheed. Who are they? I'm blanking on who they were. It's a military company. We created characters for them, but it also had Marvel characters in it. They pulled it before it was released. New York Comic Con a couple years ago. Marvel. The reaction was so negative when people heard that this was being done that Marvel backed out of the deal, even though they'd already printed the comics and they were going to be distributed that week. It was really funny because we were. I'm trying to remember. I can Google it real quick. Wait.
The only military company that I could think of is Lockheed Martin, but
Northrop Grumman.
Northrop.
Oh,
Northrop
Northrop
Grumman.
Grumman. Okay.
Yeah. I
Right.
did that. I wrote that. Darren Sanchez was editing them back then. It was me and Sean Chen, and I knew what Northrop Grumman does. They make bombs basically, but they
Yeah.
also do 500 other things, and they come to us
They're
with
Stark Industries.
they come to us saying we know what our reputation is. We want to spotlight the positive stuff we're trying to do in STEM and try to get young people to look at that part of what we do, because there's all these engineering opportunities and blah, blah, blah. So that makes sense, right? And we produced the comic completely in that light. And can you hear me? Wait.
Yeah, wait, that's what I was like. That was a weird, funny
I think
noise
your
there,
headphones
Fabian.
probably ran out of juice.
I think we've been sitting here chit-chatting for so long that your earbuds
Can
died.
you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
No? Can you hear me?
You're good.
I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Oh.
Well. What
Now I got you. We're good.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That was, but we've
Headphones died,
man,
so I
look,
switched
you should have
to
heard
the regular.
No, you should have heard
so-
what Erica said while you
Like
couldn't hear us, man. It was terrible.
You write the comic with the best of intentions, and all of a sudden it's a shitstorm, right? Well, you can say that in a PG movie. It's just an absolute cluster F. You can't say that in a PG movie. You are allowed one in a PG-13 movie, though. So
make the F count.
You got to make the F count, and that's why I said F, because I don't think this would have counted.
Yeah.
I think we still have the opportunity in the next few minutes to really have an F that counts. But then he's going to go PG-13, and we want to go PG.
Hey, man, if he goes
for all the
I don't
one
feel that
kid
bad
out there
about it.
who's reading comics still.
You know, hey, look, I hope, man, I would love to see more kids reading comics. And I mean, do you think, to that effect, do you think it's the fact of how Marvel is producing comics now? Do you think that's something that really makes it to where it's just like, look, man, I was into the library. My boy's seen a Spider-Man book, and he's like, I want to read that. And here, look, I will grab this real quick because it is right up here.
He's not gonna like my answer.
And I'm like, I don't feel like this is a good comic for my boy to like, who is 4.
How old is he?
Light in the Darkness.
How old is he? 4. That's not, and it shouldn't be necessarily, because even Stan Lee and John Romita's Spider-Man wasn't really for a 4-year-old. Okay, so you look for if you're 4 years old, you're reading Archie, or you're reading, like I did, Richie Rich and Hot Stuff, right? And then I started to understand Marvel a little more by the time I was 7, or 8. That's when I really got into Marvel. Right.
I think he just loved the cover more than anything else.
That's fine, but Marvel's produced a gajillion young reader books that are available for you to get. A gajillion of them through Scholastic and through other publishers. It doesn't have to be Marvel Comics doing it.
Yeah. Marvel publishing is different.
Yeah, I was totally looking at the library today, as far as, because we went today again. I love my local library, man. I never realized Garth Ennis wrote Batman until today, but that's neither here nor there. But I was trying to get over to the to find the comic books like that for Spider-Man that were more his age appropriate, but I didn't find anything because he was just kind of tired and rushed at that point. But I did get a Star Wars, and it's about the droids, like CP3O or C3PO hates droids, and he thought that was hilarious. We ain't read it yet, but like when he's seen the title with the droids on it, he like. So as a nerd father, I was kind of like, yes, you know what I mean? I can't lie.
I would say, like, for a 4-year-old, I mean, you could try Bone, Jeff Smith's Bone.
Yeah, but
I mean, I know it's not a Marvel comic.
4 is really young, guys. We're talking about really early reader books, and none of the comic material is really even early reader material. Even Bone. But if I'm like looking at it realistically, and you're talking about 7, 8 years old, 9 years old for Bone. When you're talking about 4, 5, 6, it's really, really appropriate early reader material, and that's real kids book stuff, and that means you go to the kids book section. You don't go for a comic book necessarily. You hope
Did I
that the
send
kids
you
book
Silver
section gets them
Spurs?
into comic books by the time they're 6 or 7.
I do. I should very much try to read that to him, Erica. You're right, because she has Silver Spurs,
Yeah,
which
you
which
read that to them, and you just don't say the F-bombs that are in the comics now.
It's a children's book.
no, that's
I wrote a
Not
children's
following. I'm talking
comic.
about Spider-Man.
no,
Oh no,
but
but I'm saying I gave him a copy of a children's book that I wrote for Capstone called The Silver Spurs of Oz. It's a Western version of the Wizard of Oz, where instead of the silver slippers that Dorothy has, she has silver spurs.
That's great. How many
So that's what
F-bombs
I'm
in there?
saying.
Just one? Just one F-bomb, right?
Listen, it was Capstone. I couldn't have any F-bombs.
It's amazing how they restrict us as writers.
It's so
all these companies
constrictive how they stop
preventing us from dropping
expressing
F-bombs in
ourselves.
books for 4-year-olds.
Well, technically, the book is for 6-year-olds, but I think it would still be okay for him.
Well, look.
I know I was
just wanna
dropping
point out.
F-bombs at 6 years old on the playground.
I just want to point out, and I'm not saying he hasn't dropped F-bombs before, but I just want to point out, I was just looking for comics and he was there, and that's something he's seen and wanted. I wasn't specifically trying to get my boy to read that because I knew from a fact, as someone that's read comics since I was young, that's not where you start. You start with the ones that have the number 1 or the number 2 or the number 3, and they're like, books this big, right? And there are, because I wanted to, like, there's some Spider-Man hand there and stuff that I want to try and read to him. But yeah, no, I would just, but I meant more. Let's talk more about like from 8 to 10. You know what I mean? Age range.
I was going to answer your question originally in a way you wouldn't have wanted me to answer. I don't care anymore. The publishers have done everything they can to
Alienate,
perpetuate a man-boy direct comic shop marketplace, which has been luckily infiltrated by female types, which annoys them and scares them so much, but they've made their headway into there. The companies deserve what they have gotten right now. They've deserved what they've gotten for 25 years. They abandoned the newsstand market and they didn't replace the newsstand market. They ignored subscription sales and opportunities. They deserve what they get. I don't care.
I get that email once a month from Marvel saying re-up your subscription to Daredevil, because I used to have subscriptions for Daredevil and everything like that, and they're like, re-up your subscriptions, and I'm like,
how by rote though? Subscriptions was never a solid enough part of the company's efforts, and even back then,
You gave me
I can't even imagine what they are now.
I gave you a flashback.
No, well, Fabian did when he brought up the subscriptions, because I hadn't thought about it in forever, and it's just, I don't know, it's nothing that ever hit the top of my head until this particular moment for a very, very long time. But I remember having subscriptions because I lived out in kind of a boondock town, and there was not a close comic shop, so I had subscriptions to 3, 4, 5 comics at a time when I was like way younger, and there was no kind of comic shop around that I could go to. You know what I mean? So
and that's mostly the kind of people who had subscriptions back then.
Although I will tell you this, they would give you the monthlies, they would never give you the annuals.
No, they didn't. It was 12-issue subscriptions, even back then. Go get the annual somewhere else. You're on your own. Look, Erica, after 1976, chances are pretty good the annual is going to suck anyway.
Hey, I wrote a Daredevil annual back in 2018.
And how much did it suck?
Not terribly.
It's an annual. It had to have sucked a little bit.
It did suck a little bit, but Marcia Takara did the artwork for it, and the opening page of it is all these heroes, but they're all a little kid would perceive them. So Moon Knight has got he's got a bunch of balloons, and what's his face? Iron Fist has got like this dragon that like comes out as he's like doing his like charging up his chi, and what was the other thing? Spider-Man's wearing boxer shorts for some reason. I don't know why.
Jack Kirby's rolling over in his grave for the love of God.
Oh, the Punisher was shooting cupcakes out of a giant gun.
This is what happens when we let women into our industry.
Oh,
See?
Jesus Christ.
You know what's going to happen right now, Fabian. Somebody's going to get that clip just now, and they're not. I know, and then they're going to be like,
there goes my chances of ever getting voted into the Eisner Hall of
Can't
Fame.
pronounce his last name, but he says that we get to be the He-Man She-Hater Women Club.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I know that I can pull out on my record, it's my long, consistent engagement with the female creative and consumer marketplace in our industry
I agree.
for 30-something years.
And all I know,
Nobody else was railing at direct market retailers in 1992 that they were completely missing out on the boat by not ordering Barbie comics. So there you go. I dare them to pull that clip out of context.
well, I'll be annoyed if they do that from this show. Because look, I'm down to have more and more female creators on. Just like I've had some of the when we had Aletha Martinez on. I don't know if you guys know her.
I know, Aletha, yeah.
Oh, dude, her quest, and just as a person, and just like I can't say I could sit here and say so many positive things, as far as like just the
Phenomenal
entire
artist, yeah.
Yeah, the conversation we had, the work that she puts out, foreign that she's getting ready to drop. I mean, go check that out. It's there. Just a couple episodes back, y'all. It was a great conversation. So
You had Skylar on too.
Yeah, we've had Skylar on. We've had Caitlin Patridge. We've had. Carissa Grant actually started off season 2. I could sit here and name and I told this to Doug.
Sounds like too many women to me.
Baby, you're killing me. This whole I've never
give you as many clips as I can.
Oh my God. If I had time to like properly cut TikToks out of all the episodes, because I gotta make sure that the episodes actually.
Sounds like I probably for this show I probably should have put on a wig and maybe stuffed a couple pillows in my shirt. Then I could be on the show. Because apparently you can't be doing comics anymore if you have a penis. There's another one, Erica. Use that one.
I'm just gonna sit here and stroke my kitty ears.
My dog is wagging her tail. Hey guys, we gotta end this soon because my dog needs to go out.
For real, it's been phenomenal, and I don't even want to know how far it can go with just the banter. I've never talked less in a show. Your dog's getting irritated. I kind of want to smoke. I ain't
You
gonna
see her
lie.
wagging her tail, guys?
And
puppy needs to go.
That's her way of saying she's got to go out. She's actually an hour overdue going out.
Oh man! All right. Well, I just want to let everybody know out there, right? Do me a favor. Check all the links in the description. I literally don't think I've ever talked less on an episode of the Quest than I did this one, but it was a pleasure having you two on and just listening to the banter. It's been phenomenal. Make sure you check out both Erica and Fabian. There's plenty of links in the description. I screwed your first name up a little bit that time, bro.
It's okay. It's inevitable.
Right. There's plenty of links in the description. Like I said, and if there was ever a reason to go check out the pre-show banter, it's from this episode. So go check the Patreon too. Just I don't even care. Just subscribe, watch the banter, and then if you want to cancel, I don't care. But just take that moment and enjoy that in your life, right? Besides that, I just want y'all to do 3 things. 1, give it that thumbs up, right? 2, get your comic on. 3, have a good night, y'all.
Peace out.
This has been the Questionnaire.
Where's the link?
Thanks for checking out the questionnaire.
In the link below, yes?
I will drop it like it's hot.
That's another party.
It's cool, man. I love it.
The questionnaire. That is all.